Okay, Alan, the show's yours.
Well, thank you. First, I want to indicate that this CVAC technology has been developed by a team of people. I'm one of them. The primary inventor of the technology is Carl Linton, who's just an absolute brilliant clinician, I would say, and what he has brought to fruition with this technology is just has caused the rest of the team to basically dedicate our everything we have to bring this into reality.
Well, I think that's very important. It's very exciting and very, very important. And since I have been exposed to this for, I think 10 years maybe. Is that possible, 10 years ago?
Yeah, that's when I got involved in it.
Yeah.
It was about 10, 11 years ago. It's been a long road. The software was extremely difficult to develop. I've been involved with lots of development of computer-based technologies. I was on the team that started General Electric's MRI business and things like that. And one of the, whenever we could get the machine to do what Carl wanted it to do, the health benefits were amazing. But getting the machine to do what he wanted it to do was extremely difficult, and that's been a lot of the challenges we faced.
Well, I am really wanting to learn, and I have some questions. And would you mind if I bombarded you with some questions?
Fire away.
Okay. The first thing I want to know is there's a thought out there that I've heard many times by some of my own colleagues whom you know, that CVAC, it's called CVAC, CVAC, that the technology might have the potential of preventing concussions and brain damage. Now, there's a lot of brain damage going on. I see it with football players that are very young in the high school area. I had one come in the other day into our medical center who is now paralyzed because of an injury. And I have 3 of them that we're treating for brain injury. And then all of a sudden, this thought comes up that CVAC may be able to help prevent these problems. Can you explain if that's a reality or not?
Well, we don't know for sure, but we are pursuing research as fast as we possibly can to answer that question. There are some underlying research that we can draw upon to provide us with a basis of the theory of why it might be producing this. We have a lot of anecdotal reports from people that have had head trauma to tell us that it's had done some wonderful things for them. But we really have to do the placebo-controlled study to know that for sure. But the fundamental mechanism, and one of the major discoveries that we have, is that the cell membranes, including the membranes of the mitochondria that form a liquid crystal, are actually piezoelectric. In other words, when you change the pressure across them, it changes the voltage. And then there are studies published that it is those voltage changes on the membranes of the cell that cause L-arginine to release a nitric oxide molecule. And there are a lot of studies showing that nitric oxide synthase is the mechanism that stimulates an increase in mitochondria of the brain and potentially of the other parts of the body. Dr. Gutseva a few years ago published a study in the Journal of Neuroscience where she exposed mice to something similar that has some similar aspects to the pressure changes in CVAC, and she measured a doubling of the mitochondria in the brains of those mice. That's something that's very difficult to do in humans.
Well, that is very, very interesting. So there's some work being done then to determine if there is a possibility of helping to prevent these problems, because some of the prices that are paid for these kids to play football and other things as well, but this really bothers me because I see the worst. I see the absolute worst when these kids are damaged and injured and paralyzed for life and unable to function. It makes me want to cry.
Yeah. Well, the theory is that if an athlete has more mitochondria in their brain, before an impact on the head, that more mitochondria will survive the trauma, and so there will be less of a chance that the brain cells run out of energy, because mitochondria are what produce the mechanism for energy for the brain cells. Another potential mechanism is that the brain is about 20% mitochondria. So if you increase the quantity of mitochondria, you're going to make the brain physically larger, so that there is less of a slosh effect, so to speak, of the brain hitting the inside of the skull. So that would reduce the impact of, as an example, bighorn sheep that live at high altitude can handle, they claim, a 450 G shock without brain damage. However, football impacts are quite often in the range of 50 to 125 Gs that cause brain damage. Now, there was a study published by researchers at the Cincinnati Children's Hospital back in November that they looked at nearly 6,000 concussions and 20 million potential exposures to a head impact, and they measured that at half of the games played at higher altitude, there was a 30% lower rate of concussions in those athletes. And then they followed that up with another study that was published in February of this year, where in the NFL games played at the higher altitudes, there is again a 30% lower rate of concussions for those individuals. So that has really lit a fire under us and a lot of other individuals that some of these effects that we're seeing in glucose metabolism and those other things may also have an impact on preventing and maybe even treating post-concussion syndrome.
That's very, very interesting, and we certainly give you our energy and vitality in this research, because this could be earth-shaking. Absolutely earth-shaking. And nitric oxide is a very, very important factor in the mechanism of the human body, all the way from repairing erectile dysfunction to the brain. And I found that very interesting reality. So the nitric oxide factor is very interesting, and we will get to more of the ramifications of how it works and what it does as we progress through the show. We have two of our intern co-hosts with us today, and I want to have them come up with a few questions for you as well. So Chad has already said hello to everybody. Let's have Alex say hello to everybody.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
They can't answer you, but you can sure ask them. And you're on TV too, so wave to everybody, right? All right, super. So Alex is here, and Chad has a question. You want to ask that question?
Yeah, I do. A little small one. What is needed to bring this technology into adoption for people who need it?
Well, that's absolutely the right question, and we're doing everything we can to accelerate that. Right now, what we really need is to find the right investors to help fund these research studies. There's a lot of attention and hype given to things like social networking and other things that take a lot of attention away from prospective investors. These research studies are very expensive to conduct, especially if you're going to do them the right way with placebo controls and things like that, with the right quality of researchers. So I've dedicated most of my time to searching and finding prospective investors. We're very willing to make good equity deals if we can find the right investor.
Well, that's what it takes, and that's why people invest, so that they can get equity and make money.
Yeah, we're also working with some investment bankers in New York City that are positioning our company to go public soon based on this information, and we're right now one of the most critical needs we have for our financing is to do the paperwork that the Securities and Exchange Commission needs to be able to list our stock as being public.
Sounds very good. We wish you every good thing, and hopefully you'll put this thing together. You know, I've been around a lot of things like this that have come to fruition. In my town, where I grew up, actually, where we are broadcasting from today, the Taco Bell chain got started as Taco Tia, and that had to go through all of that process, and finally now it's a big worldwide organization. I had a very interesting experience at Taco Bell during Lent. I don't eat meat, and I wanted a bean taco. This is a long time ago, and I went in and ordered a bean taco, and I couldn't get it because it wasn't on the menu, it wasn't in the computer, it wasn't anywhere. They didn't have a price for it, and the kid wasn't thinking, so I couldn't get a bean taco. So I went. At the time, I was president and CEO of a bank. So I went to the phone and I called the chairman of the board of Taco Bell, which is in Irvine, and I told him, I said, I have a big problem. Your store on Bristol won't give me a bean taco. And he laughed and laughed. He said, you go in there, they'll give you whatever you want. So I went in 10 minutes later, and they were aghast. A little kid came up to me and he said, oh, you must be so important. And I said, why? He said, oh, the big boss of the worldwide corporation called and said we should give you anything you want. and so I said, well, I just want a bean taco. So he went and got me a dozen. And then I said, how much do I owe you? And he said, oh, no, we're not supposed to charge you anything. So I remember, of course, Mr. Bell when he was in San Bernardino, too, and that, of course, wasn't the chairman of the board. He was the founder of the company. And also, we got some other companies. Culligan was very powerful here. I knew Mr. Culligan well. And I went through with them. I was just a kid, but I still understood what they were doing. The whole thing about raising money. It is not easy. It is not easy at all. And Chad has another question. He asked me about published research in medical journals, and I have no clue.
Yeah. Are there any published research studies in medical journals that were placebo-controlled?
Yes. Independent researchers at Stanford University that have no financial interest in the company conducted first a study in elite athletes that confirmed the published study conducted by the researchers at the University of Hawaii that showed there was a greater than a 10% increase in the oxygen-carrying capacity of the blood. There was also, for responders, they measured about a 5% increase in VO2 max. That was not a placebo-controlled study. They measured the athletes at the beginning and at the end, but the researchers at Stanford devised a very clever placebo mechanism that appeared to be very, very scientifically appropriate and effective. And what they did is they measured glucose metabolism through the oral glucose tolerance test, which is the gold standard to diagnose if somebody is pre-diabetic or diabetic, in middle-aged men between 40 and 60 who got less than 3 hours of exercise a week. And in that study, the peaks on the oral glucose tolerance test exceeded 140 milligrams per deciliter. And by some standards, that's a measure of prediabetes. And there are some estimates that about a third of the population is pre-diabetic, don't know it. Well, that was the case with these individuals. And the individuals that took the active CVAC sessions for 40 minutes, 3 times a week for 10 weeks, at the end of 10 weeks, they converted to being normal from being pre-diabetic. And then the placebo group continued to have worse impairment of their glucose metabolism as they were headed toward diabetes. So that's a very powerful study that has been published in a peer-review medical journal. It's conducted by Dr. Ann Friedlander at Stanford University.
Boy, you're educating us more and more. This sounds more exciting as time goes on. And Alex indicated to me that he has a question. Alex, do you want to take the mic?
Yes. I was going to ask, do you have more research underway?
Yes. Karen Herbst from when she was at the University of California, San Diego, she's an MD, Ph.D. Endocrinologist. She has published in a pilot study with CVAC for individuals with chronic pain from a disease called Derkham's disease, which if you want to know something about one of the most horrible diseases on earth, in my opinion. Dercums certainly is in there. It's DERCUMS. And she got good results, and we now need to replicate that with a placebo-controlled study. And she is also working on other research involving the CVAC process. Dr. Mark Lynham, who is a podiatrist here in Southern California, completed a pilot study on individuals with diabetic neuropathy. And in those individuals, he actually was able to measure an improvement in sensory function. People with diabetic neuropathy, their feet are painful, they're numb, they have a high rate of needing amputations and things like that. Well, there really isn't anything other than intense exercise that can restore the sensory function for those individuals. And these people are in a lot of pain, and their feet hurt a lot, so they can't exercise. So that's one of the primary focuses we have for our research, is to find ways to help people who cannot exercise. And now with these publications in concussion and post-concussion syndrome, we're very excited. We can relate all of these effects essentially to mitochondrial effects in addition to stimulating the lymphatic system. And these are both mechanisms that occur within exercise. And so the way that I like to think of this is, there's certain things that happen during exercise. What we're able to do is control the pressure very precisely, hitting the right targets, so that we can make an extremely effective form of exercise that's beneficial for everyone from extreme athletes to diabetics to people with potential brain issues once we can complete the research studies.
Well, thank you for that one. Our student co-hosts are coming up with some good questions, so I want to give Chad a chance to ask his question.
Yes, another one. What is the theory that presents the mechanism of action of how the CVAC process might be able to help people with post-concussion syndrome and TBI?
Okay, well, that's a very good question, one of which is through these two mechanisms of mitochondrial biogenesis and lymphatic stimulation. We suspect, and there's going to have to be a lot of animal studies done to answer this question, because it's hard to do biopsies of human brains. But what we think may be happening is that if we're increasing the quantity of mitochondria, then the brain cells have more energy, and if they have more energy, that might help them heal faster and repair faster. And another mechanism is the brain has structures inside of it called a lymphatic system, which is kind of like the lymphatic system in the rest of the body, and that they've now been able to image check valves or valves along the lymphatic system. So we think that this pressure cycling we're doing, and we go through 200 to 400 pressure changes in a 20-minute session, that we are literally pumping these fluids through the brain and through the rest of the body. And some of the fluids that we're pumping are waste products that the cells produce. So removing the waste products is important. It's especially important in diabetes and other things like Alzheimer's disease and things like that. That might explain why exercise is beneficial to help prevent Alzheimer's disease. But also, if someone has a brain injury, there may be little bits of broken cells that are left in the brain that interfere with the cells talking to each other. So by stimulating this lymphatic system, we may be flushing away or washing away those broken bits of cells, making the cells better able to talk to each other.
Oh wow, this is the real thing, man. You got a big challenge ahead of you with all the implications and ramifications of this whole situation. I think it's amazing that you're doing all of this. I have a question myself, and that is maybe it would be interesting to have a machine like this in our medical center. Is that something that's doable?
Absolutely. I mean, that's our goal, is to right now, our primary goal is to get as many medical centers, universities researching this as possible.
If you had a machine and you were willing to follow certain protocols, we'd need do you have somebody who can get, and I may have one, a doctor who's willing to do the I think it's called IRB?
Yes, we've had about more than 5 institution review boards approve 8 protocols with this as a non-significant risk device, which is a special safety classification that the FDA gives, where they allowed local IRBs to make the decision, and so Karen Herbst, who is currently the chairman of our scientific advisory board, and Mary Steinman, who's on staff here at CVAC, we can help prepare the IRB documents that they need. We have, the big one is the informed consent document. The protocol has to be developed, and that depends on what area is going to be researched.
We need to discuss that sometime soon. Not on the air, of course, because we don't have a whole lot of time to do that. And speaking of time, this is time for a break. I got the finger from our producer. That doesn't mean the finger that you're all thinking about. That means the index finger that I've got to get ready to take a break. Right, Mia?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, good. So this is Dr. Donald Jolly-Gabriel on KCAA, 1050 on your AM radio dial. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. So now we're back, and I am highly interested in pursuing some more information. And Alex has a question for us. I think he's going to give us a little bit of a challenge to understand what we're talking about.
Yes, I wanted to know, what is the CVAC and how does it work?
Well, it's essentially a pressure chamber that people sit inside of. They can relax in it. Some people will sleep in it, especially if they are sleep deprived or something. This can help them get sleep. Many times people will sleep inside the pod, and they relax in it, and then we take them up to graduated varying levels of altitude, or a low pressure that's lower than the ambient atmosphere. And like climbing Mount Everest, it takes time to go up to the higher ranges. But by using negative pressure, we believe we're doing essentially simulating many of the effects of the cells on the cells, like very effective forms of exercise that promote health, like total body interval resistance training. And when you pick a barbell up and you lift it up, the muscles compress and they squeeze the blood out of the capillaries. So the muscle is under compression simultaneously with a low oxygen level, and then you put the barbell down, and then there's a rush of fresh blood that comes through the muscle. And we simulate that effect on the cell while you're sitting inside of it by going through these 200 to 400 pressure changes in 20 minutes. And if you think about it, when you do resistance training, that's about how many pressure changes your muscle cells get and your whole body gets, potentially even your brain, because you're increasing your heart rate and your breathing, and so those pressure changes are going to go up in your brain. So essentially, the way the CVAC process works is by essentially it's like an exercise mimetic, and by controlling the pressure very, very carefully, we think we can do a better job. At least some of the scientific evidence shows that we can do a better job than you can with exercise. And by using negative pressure, we're essentially increasing the pressure differential from the arterial side to the venous side. Normal blood pressure is 120 millimeters of mercury over 80. Well, at 22,000 feet in simulated altitude, that's about 400 millimeters of mercury. And by having a large pressure differential like that and using a negative pressure, we believe we're drawing those lymphatic fluids into the lymph system, and then literally pumping it to remove those waste products from the body. And then also the lymphatic system is known to be the source of the immune system. So that may also explain why exercise is beneficial. It may also explain why exercise can help with stimulate the immune system, because exercise stimulates the lymphatic system.
Absolutely, amazingly true. I hope everybody's learning. We need to learn. We're in a learning mode. Speaking of learning, I was once young and played sports in school, and we did a couple of things. Well, first of all, oxygen wasn't declared a drug in those days, so we could, and it has been declared a drug. I call it the drug that God invented, purely invented, and that the FDA approved. So that makes it really important. God invented it, and the FDA approved it, and so oxygen is very important. Now, about oxygen. We used to have oxygen tanks when I played football especially, but other sports as well. I was in high school, and we'd be sitting on the bench waiting to go in the game or do whatever we were waiting for, and we would suck on our oxygen. And we would have we'd have a better performance. There was no question about it. And then our coach, we had two coaches. Our coaches were both priests, and they demanded that we go to Big Bear to practice. And I didn't like going up to Big Bear. We had to take that old bus up there and take about an hour and 45 minutes to get there. And we'd get there and we'd have to sleep in tents. And it wasn't my way of having a great 3 or 4 days, but we did it. And I asked one time, why do we have to go to Big Bear? He said, well, we have to be at a high altitude. You have to get used to functioning in less oxygen levels. And I didn't understand what he was talking about. Now I do, of course, but I had no clue. But we did that. Now, it reminds me now of maybe this is something like the CVAC creates. Is there any truth to that?
Well, from the studies we've done, we are. There's evidence in 2 studies that we are increasing the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, and that. But we believe that's more of a adaptation process, where the CVAC process for people who are fit, they can adapt to new environments more quickly than people who are not fit. So, if you take somebody who is in great shape and you take them up to the mountains, they will probably be able to handle the altitude better than people who are not in good shape. So we think by improving the fitness that the human body then more quickly adapts to the challenges that it's faced, like athletic performance or walking across the room or healing.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. That makes good sense. I have read some articles over the last year or so about CVAC. Wall Street Journal, I think I was in the Wall Street Journal. I read something, and the Men's Journal, and I think you had something in The View, on the show, Good Morning America, and something in the AARP, the magazine for people my age. And it talked about CVAC improving athletic performance. Is that validated by any kind of research?
Yes, and some of it has been published. The University of Hawaii, in elite athletes, they measured 10% increase in oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. That one of the reasons we get a lot of attention in the press. There's now been 3 Wall Street Journal articles. They announced that Novak Djokovic began using CVAC during the 2010 U.S. Open. That's where he beat Roger Federer. He then went on during the next year to have what John McEnroe has been quoted as saying the best season in the history of men's tennis. So in addition to the oxygen saturation measurements that were published by the University of Hawaii, they also measured increases in erythropoietin, which is the hormone that signals the body to make more red blood cells. They also measured a greater than a 5% increase in a measurement called VO2 max, which is maximum oxygen absorption at maximum exercise. That's like a measurement of the horsepower of the human body. Now, to put that in reference, athletes will increase their training from 5 hours a week to 15 hours a week to get a 1 percentage point increase in VO2 max. Doping produces, this is EPO doping. There are not a lot of studies on EPO doping, but there are some. EPO is or erythropoietin is the drug that Lance Armstrong admits to having used. It's banned. But EPO doping produces about a 2% increase in VO2 max, oxygen absorption. And to put that in reference, a 2% increase in VO2 max is 5 seconds reduction in a 5,000-meter foot race. And in some races, that is the difference between first and last place. So the researchers at Stanford University first did studies in elite athletes, and they got nearly the same number. They got about a 12% increase in oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. But what really knocked their socks off was during the VO2 max test, they measured power. In other words, how hard the athlete could press against the pedals on a bicycle ergometer. And they measured a 20% increase in peak power. So that means a basketball player could possibly jump higher. It may mean that a hockey player can push his skates against the ice harder, which is going to make him faster. And the increase in the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, generally what we've observed means that athletes don't get tired as quickly. When one of the first hockey players here in San Diego that was playing for the Gulls, the San Diego Gulls, started using CVAC, he walked into my office and he goes, he was said, I was on the ice for 3.5 minutes. And I don't know much about hockey, so I go, yeah, so what? and he said, no, you don't. Normally we're on the ice for like 45 seconds. I was on the ice for 3.5 minutes. I wasn't tired. I got off the ice because it was just getting crazy. So another way to look at some of the research studies, if you go to our website at CVACSystems.com, you'll see that we have about more than 30 of these units installed. And the NHL teams that did the best in the playoffs, you'll see that there are CVAC units located near those centers. Most of the athletes that use this, they demand to keep it secret because they don't want other athletes to discover it.
Oh, it's the same thing with hyperbarics. We have them come, and it's got to be a big secret. But, of course, oxygen has been declared a drug now, and you're not supposed to do drugs before games. So I don't know how that's going to affect you guys, but it affects us kind of weirdly.
Yeah, well, in 2006, the World Anti-Doping Agencies reviewed these technologies, and they decided to not ban them. Okay, and originally the ethics team thought that maybe they should be banned because they work, but the executive team or council decided not to ban them because a lot of the academic researchers rose up in protest, saying, well, this levels the playing field. If someone lives in Hawaii, they can sleep on a mountaintop, and they can an hour later they can be at sea level training, because the concept is to live high, train low.
Yep.
Okay. However, athletes in Canada can't do that. But if they have a CVAC unit, they can.
You can even out the thing. That's really exciting. I like that. We just have a couple more minutes, Alan. So I have a quick question for you, and that has to do with where we can get use of a machine. I know that there's a clinic in Costa Mesa called Know Your Options Wellness Center. They have one of your machines. What does it cost, for example, to go there and use it?
Well, we just installed this unit. I have not asked them what their pricing is yet. So I think you'd have to call the center.
Okay.
Like most of our centers, the pricings are about $30 to $50 for a 20-minute session.
Okay.
And people in the price differential is usually based on people buying a package of units of sessions. How the number of sessions, the more you buy, the lower the price per session.
Okay, that's good. Well, then they can call the Know Your Options Wellness Center in Costa Mesa and get that information. So that's a good thing. You want to give your website a couple of times. I want everybody to get a piece of paper and pencil. So if you want to write it down, please.
Yeah, the easy thing to do is just to Google, CVAC Pod or CVAC Systems.
CVAC, CVAC.
Right, CVAC, CVAC Pod or CVAC Systems. That will our website will pop up. Our URL is www.cvacsystems.com.
Great. Well, I want to tell you it's been exciting having you on the show. It's been informative, and I'm very, very grateful. And hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months you'll come back and share with us some of the progress you're making and some stories about athletics and some stories about concussions and all the things that you can do and fix. And I'd love to have you back. So please feel free to call. And God bless you and all your work. Our thoughts are with you, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.